All right, Ian. It's time to listen to some voicemails from the faithful listeners out there. You can go to anchor.fm.
Okay.
/ the CU podcast and leave us a message or a question. Try to keep it short. I like those 20-second in and out. Hey, my name is this. Go, and that's it. Don't leave me hanging there.
Let's do it.
Okay, this is from Cameron, who's got a question.
Hello, Pat, Ian, Cameron from Scotland here. Quick question for Ian. As it's very evident now that Sony and Microsoft have emphasised their focus on digital distribution via their own platforms, is it perhaps a beginning of a slow end for game stores and ultimately retro game stores as each generation of gamers become more accustomed to losing out on physical editions of modern games?
I think, I mean, on a timeline long enough, yeah, physical game stores, probably have an expiration date. But I think currently, right now, yes, here comes Patty Roo with a certain Blu-ray disc. Fuck me. So yes, I do think that physical game stores will cease to exist at some point. I'm not saying necessarily soon. Right now, it depends on what they're selling. A game store like GameStop that is only selling physical copies of games from modern systems where digital distribution is gaining a big foothold. Yeah, I think those are going to go the way of the buffalo quicker than a game store that is, its reason for existing is selling physical copies of old retro games. At some point, it's all video games, yes, but they are kind of two distinct hobbies. So, I think that's where we're at right now. We will see the end of places like GameStop, I think, in the nearer future than we will places like, say, Luna. But yeah, the days are numbered for all of it in some way, shape, or form.
If you check out a certain documentary, which is what half of this is about the end of retail in general, but more specifically when it comes to game stores, it's a yes. It's just, when does it end? Joe Santulli says, with digital, it stops. So at that point, you don't have people buying physical media or wanting to go back to it. So there is a tail end. It's just, when does
and
it
you don't
end?
have things coming back into the store either.
Yeah.
You're losing any sort of stock.
There is a time limit. So children and even teenagers today won't care about physical media. They already don't care about it when it comes to movies or music. That's pretty much done. Except for little niche things. It's pretty much done going forward. People won't want, you can't give away even Blu-rays at the swap meet for the most part. Video games is the last one. So it's going to happen the same. It's just, when is it going to happen? 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. There's going to be a limit. And there will still be video game stores around, but it'll be more and more like
it'll be less
curiosities. You won't need to have, even in the past 5 years, since we were talking about this, with the peak of, like, I'll say retro game collecting in general, in terms of, like, everyone's into it. There was a major game retailer in the Northwest that closed. They had like 30 retro game stores, something like that, in the Northwest. They closed most of them in the past few years. They closed them up. They overexpanded, but they thought the interest was there, and it was there probably for a few years, 3, 4, 5 years. Like, there was a lot of interest, but then once you get to like 2016, 17, 18, it starts to taper down for a lot of different reasons, and it starts to get less. And the demographic shift, other products fill the gaps and things like that. But there will be less people going forward that want to collect stuff in those walls over there. That's just the way it is. But check out the Blu-rays. I don't know why I didn't have one here. There you go. Let's see the next one here.
Hey guys, long time, first time, big fan. How do you think the Wii U will be looked at in about 20 years?
What a coincidence. Stick around. I believe that's the Q&A. Not to spoil it, but I believe that's the Q&A. And we didn't do that because of that, but that's a coincidence. So it was a good Q&A selection on the Patreon polls. I think it wins out. If it wins out, no, it doesn't win out. So we can discuss it real quick. That was second place.
Okay.
So sorry for cutting you off there. So what was saying?
Do you think it'll be similar to the Virtual Boy in the sense that nobody but collectors?
He's the same person that probably suggested it for the Q&A. You double dipping here, Colton, but I appreciate the hustle. So is it going to be closer to the Wii U, to the Virtual Boy, or like the Dreamcast, where there's a hardcore following, 20 years later for it?
I don't know that it's going to be the Virtual Boy, because I don't think it's that laughable of a failure, but I also don't think it's necessarily going to have the appeal that the Dreamcast does, when
all the games are re-released?
All the games are re-released on a system that has more stuff on it that people enjoy. I don't think there's really any... it remains to be seen how Super Mario 3D World handles the segments that used the Wii U tablet, but I can't even really think of any games on the Wii U that were drastically improved by using the tablet. So I don't think you're going to have a big fan base of people in 20 years who are buying Wii U's so they can play Ubisoft's Zombie U, the way it was intended. I just don't see it.
And to say it closer to the Dreamcast potentially, there's this romantic notion around the Dreamcast because it was Sega's last system and last hurrah for some of those franchises, or you know what I mean? So the Wii U doesn't have that cachet. It's like you're gonna get another Star Fox game eventually. You know what I mean? There wasn't even a Metroid on Wii U, so it doesn't even fit into that category. It's like a blip in time for Nintendo. The Wii U.
It's a very wobbly stepping stone from the Wii to the Switch.
It's a half console progression, basically, when it comes to that. All right, next, what we got? But thanks, Cole, for that.
Hey guys, this is Branton from Branton, Missouri. I just wanted to acknowledge that with the theme song at the beginning of the show, I know that you guys think that you faded out so that everybody thinks the line is no one out there's immune, but I know that the line is actually no one out there is amused, and it was part of the court order that you had to include this to reveal the true nature of your program. And I guess in that respect you could say no one out there is confused about this. But my favorite NES game is Dick Tracy, and hope you guys can maybe work that in sometime. All right.
This is a little bit harder than it looks, huh, Branton? It's a little bit more difficult. All right, next.
Hey, Pat and Ian. This is David from Dallas, longtime listener, first-time caller. I was wondering if you guys ever played a licensed game you liked so much that you had to check out the property the game was based off of. For example, when I was a kid, I remember renting WWS SmackDown on the PlayStation and liking it so much that I had to start watching wrestling to figure out who all the wrestlers were.
Wow.
Thanks, guys. Love the podcast and keep up the good work.
David, that's one of the better questions we've gotten in a long time.
That is a really good one.
I don't know if I've never thought about that. So a game
I wish
that
I had a little bit more time to think about it.
A game that you didn't know the IP
answers.
of. So you got into wrestling after playing a crappy wrestling game as a kid. So you say the original WF WrestleMania?
Much that you had to check out the property.
SmackDown. He said SmackDown.
Oh, SmackDown.
For example, when I was a kid, I remember renting WWS SmackDown on the PlayStation.
Okay, God. I'm thinking when I was a kid. God, he must be like 20, 25 years old, the guy. I can't think of one on the top of my head.
So I mean, it's funny that he mentions that because
Go 13. Obviously, that's it. I didn't know it was a hardcore, mature Japanese manga. I can't believe I didn't think that's the one.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's a good one. I have a similar experience with wrestling. When WCW NWO versus the World came out on the N64, I think that was like right before I started watching wrestling, and I remember going over to my friend's house and playing that game and really enjoying it.
In '97
and asking a bunch of questions about it, and I started watching wrestling soon after. It wasn't that I'd never watched wrestling, but I'd been a lapsed fan, so that did kind of help get me back into it. Other ones, playing Tecmo Cup soccer game and some of the Captain Tsubasa games has gotten me more interested in the Captain Tsubasa mangas and animes. And when I think it was Dragon Ball Fighters came out, that kind of reinvigorated my interest in Dragon Ball, which is something that Vani loves, but I'm not 100% as knowledgeable on. I've seen all of the original Dragon Ball, but not Z. So those are 3 examples. That's happened a few times, and probably more times if I were to actually really sit down and think about it.
Hey, this is Nick from Tokyo.
Hi.
I was wondering what your thoughts on Zoop was. Remember Zoop? All those commercials and that Blockbuster campaign they had and stuff? Yeah, so I want to know what your thoughts on Zoop are or were.
So Zoop came out in 95. I remember it. That must have been on the PC as well, wasn't it?
It was on the PC because that's actually how I remember Zoop.
I don't remember the Blockbuster commercials. Maybe if you put it in front of me, I'd see it and remember again. I do remember them trying making Zoop a thing, though.
They definitely did. The problem
try to give it a marketing push for Zoop.
So I remember my buddy had the demo, and we played the demo on his PC using his Gravis gamepad. And I remember it being an interesting idea, but the problem was it's not really a puzzle game.
It looks like dudes with attitudes, kind of.
The game just gets well, not exactly, but I could see a little bit of that. Yeah,
It's like action and puzzle.
It's very actiony, and it gets to the point where it wanted to be a puzzle game. It wanted you to think that you were using your brain, but it's very actiony, and it just gets to the point where it gets too fast, and it's literally not possible to keep up. I don't.
There's a reason there wasn't a Zoop franchise.
Right. It's amusing, but there's really not much to it. There's not a whole lot of using your brain when you're playing it. It's just fast fingers, and it gets kind of old kind of quick.
Publisher was Viacom New Media?
Yes. Yeah. I still remember what the pieces looked like and shit.
There was one on the Jaguar? I did not know there was Zoop was on the Jaguar.
Zoop was everywhere.
I didn't know it was on the Jaguar.
They really did try to make Zoop a thing.
God, what a fucking library of games on the Jaguar. Jesus Christ. Okay, next.
It's Cameron. And I have an N64, and I really want to get this one game, Animal Crossing. I have it for like every system, but they have one for the N64. But unfortunately, it's only for the Japanese versions. Is there an easy way to jailbreak your US N64 to play that game? Thanks. Let me know.
Cameron, did you dial to Luna Video Games by accident? You think you were talking to Ian? There?
Yeah.
Is that what he was asking how to jailbreak your N64 to play?
You don't have to jailbreak anything. There's I think there's like tabs in there that you can melt down, but I think you can actually just take the system apart and remove the restrictor plate underneath the cartridge slot so that the cartridges fit in.
Oh, for N64?
Just look it up.
There's a lot. Yeah, we're not Google.
It's easy.
I don't.
Google it.
All right.
Hi guys, I love the show. I love the Not for Resale documentary. I just wanted to plug a French documentary about collectors in Japan called Collector's Quest Season 3. I made the subtitles for. It's half in French, half in Japanese, but it's full of retro goodness, of preservationists, of not for sale.
All right, you owe us money now for this advertisement, I think. I know I appreciate it, but I don't appreciate it. You're plugging your show. That's fine. I've seen a little bit of the documentary. It's interesting.
Yeah, check it out. It's nice.
Check it out. I want to invoice you $500 now. This is from Thomas Helmer.
Hey, Pat. Hey, Ian. This is Thomas from Iowa. I'm a 90s PC gamer, and I was just wondering, what Apple or PC exclusive games from the 80s or 90s do you guys think still hold up from a gameplay perspective? Thanks.
Exclusive PC games from the 80s that were never on something else or Apple. God, any of the Sierra Adventure games or a lot of the LucasArts stuff.
Yeah,
I mean there's a ton.
One of my favorites is a graphic horror game called Crypt of Medea. I don't think that was ever on anything other than an Apple II.
I mean, God, X-Wing and TIE Fighter were never re-released on another console.
No, they weren't. And those are fantastic games.
Dark Forces was on PlayStation.
Yeah, Dark Forces.
Civilization eventually came to every console. I mean, there's a ton. I mean, it's like you get to think ones that weren't. I guess which ones weren't ported over. I don't know. Noctropolis. There you go. Check out Noctropolis.
Jill of the Jungle.
Jill of the Jungle. Was that Apogee?
Yeah,
it was Apogee.
It was.
All right. A couple more. It's from John.
Hey guys, a couple quick questions for you. First, what is the last verse of the theme song for Flea Market Madness?
What?
After Frank introduces himself, I cannot figure that out for the life of me.
Bop-a-doo-wop.
And two, do you think Nintendo will extend the life of Super Mario 35? Thanks for all the hard work and keep it up.
All right, John, get back on the rig there, John. Yeah, it's a zoobity-bop sort of thing at the end of the...
Oh, so it's not actual words.
No. Zap-a-doo-bop, bop, bop.
Ah.
I should have went to jingle writing. I have a gift. I have a big head when it comes to I love my jingles.
I'm glad.
My mom used to make up tons of little jingles, and that's where I got it from. My mom's, kind of insane, but that's where I got it from.
Jingle jangle. Fuck it up from
what was the other thing you said?
angle.
Will Nintendo extend Super Mario 35? We got, a couple months to see.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a great game. I would love them to keep it. Unfortunately, I see less and less people playing it when I sign on now. So I feel like, not into the game, but just like, you can check what people are playing. I see less people playing it. So if Nintendo sees a decline in the user base, I have a feeling they may use that as an excuse to go ahead and axe it like they said they were going to.
But then why just keep it going? Just the servers probably don't take up that much space.
Because Nintendo's going to Nintendo.
See, that's the thing. That's the one thing where it's like, we got to preserve a way to experience that again. Because if that goes away, how are you going to be able to do that experience again?
Right.
Unless you set up some sort of weird private server to do that. I hope so. I hope they do the right thing. Brendan, we'll do a couple more.
Hey, Pat and Ian. For Cyberpunk, do you think the death threats they got last time they delayed the game contributed towards releasing before the game was ready? Side note, because Pat wanted a return of Catholic Fish Days, Vatican II didn't exactly change those rules. That was just the message.
Oh, this is the comment about that. This guy is trying to be smart.
The current canon law still
he's
says
being
the
smart.
norm is to not eat meat on Fridays throughout the year. Fish is still allowed, but regional bishop conferences can change some of those details for their area. U.S. bishops, after the council, lifted the requirement to abstain from meat on Fridays outside of Lent, saying people could substitute some other sacrifice.
Okay, we got it. It happened after Vatican II. That's fine. It happened. It happened after that. In the
More
early
knowledge
60s.
is always good, Pat.
No, that's fine.
So
that's
it's
fine.
nice to know.
No, it's fine.
What was the question about Cyberpunk?
Oh, about like did the death threats?
Affect them releasing it? No, I don't think so.
No,
I
there's
think
too much money at stake.
I think
they're just
investors.
stupid. Yeah.
I think investors are why the game.
The investors want to make their money.
Yeah.
Had they known it would have been a fucking disaster, they probably would have said, okay, this is a disaster. And I've done that. Okay. But no, it's all in good fun with Brendan, though, because he did a follow-up apologizing. I don't fucking care. I just think it's funny. He got me on a technicality. And we'll do, let's see, one or two more.
One more.
Hey, Pat and Ian. It's Brian, longtime fan of the show. Do either of you have any fun memories growing up with small mom-and-pop game stores or rental places?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You have a very soothing voice.
Thanks, Ian.
Not you.
Oh, you're looking at me when you said that.
No,
Brian? Want to play it again?
Yeah, it was nice.
Hey, Pat and Ian. It's Brian, longtime fan of the show. Do either of you have any fun memories growing up with small mom-and-pop game stores or rental places?
You want him to read children's books?
Read children's books, Brian.
Right.
I definitely do. There was one in my hometown called Worldwide Music and Games. I remember going there it was only around for like 10 or 11 years, but I remember going there when I was young, and I also met one of my closest friends, Jay, who no longer lives in the U.S. He lives in Japan. But I met my buddy Jay there. That was where I went from like the time I was 10 until the time I moved 10 or 11. That was where I went, and there was a really good Jamaican restaurant next door that I used to always go and get patties from. Cool place. Pick up CDs. They were good about special orders. They always had they carried multiple systems. They didn't focus heavily on retro. Retro was still kind of a burgeoning idea then. I was going there in like 99, 2000, but they carried Dreamcast stuff, and they still carried NES and Super Nintendo games and stuff like that too. So yeah, I very fond memories of that store. And my second apartment ended up being right across the street from it for like the last year that it was open.
Oh, so in terms of, I have tons of stories about rental places. I always bring up the Magic Star Video case, because that was like, you get free rentals. Because remember, you had to buy a fucking membership to a lot of these places. You had to buy like $100 membership in order to rent VHS tapes from these places in the 80s, even early 90s. It was weird. So I guess they wanted your money up front. I don't know.
Well, because the copies of the videos
were $100.
Stupid expensive.
VHS
too.
tapes were $100.
Yeah, and in the 80s, like to get like an Aliens or something like that, you had to buy like the special rental copy, and it was stupid expensive.
Yeah, it wasn't like Columbia House when it was like, you're like 10 for $1. No. So I remember my father. That's when I always said, what the two games I got, Wizards and Warriors and Mickey Mouse Capade. I rented those two at the same time. Or the first time I played Super Mario Brothers 2 it was rented because you couldn't find it for sale, but the rental place had it. The next town over was a little mom and pop place. It was almost like a house that was converted to a video rental. So it was like the downstairs. I'll never forget, they had the Silkworm arcade game there. Never forget that. And then I got Super Mario Bros. 2 and played it for like 3 days. And I was like, oh my God, this is the best game ever, because it was. So I always had those memories, and tons of going to the local place where it was a little Indian-owned convenience store where they had like the porn in the back. It always had the porn in the back with the beads. And then, but before that, you saw it, there was a little rack like 3.5 feet tall, like this size of the NES games. This was your section of NES games, right? It was like 3.5 by like 2.5, and they had a decent selection there, but it was good because it was off the beaten track. It wasn't like in the middle, so it was like only people from that town went there. So you're more likely to find potentially the popular game, like Baseball Stars. You could get there potentially, or one of those things. But they also had the weird, like I said, the magenta multi-cart that I never saw before. We rented that, me and Billy, and played that weekend. So those are my memories there. In terms of local game stores, I don't have a huge amount before 2000, except for UVT, which was in Scotch Plains, New Jersey, right by Beaucraft Amusement Park, which I brought up every other month in the show. And it was one of the earliest, even probably before Funkoland, or just about that time. We're talking early 90s to mid 90s, where you could trade in stuff and they would price it out. They didn't have a thing. They would just say, they'd either buy it completely or say, we don't need this. They had too many of them. It was all or nothing for that. And I remember that might have been where I got a TurboGrafx-16 game that I always remember. Did I have Dragon Spear or not? Or did I rent it? I might have gotten from them and bought it, but I definitely traded in TurboGrafx games to them for cash or credit, and also some NES games I still had. We're talking like 92, 91. That early, like before I was going to Funkoland, like that early, 90, 91.
Wow.
So it was, yeah. And it was, I remember it was always run by a couple of women that were in there. I remember seeing men where there was, I think it was a family owned thing, and it was VHS and video games. Like that's what they did back then. Yeah, it must have been, I'm talking like 90, 91, super early. And then of course, once you get to late 90s, there was like little video game places inside indoor flea markets. Route 18 Flea Market had a guy there. There was places here and there. Digital Press, Joe Santulli, one of the earlier game stores I was aware of. All right. Well, thanks for the voicemail stuff. Thanks for calling me out on my fishing accuracy, Brendan. Appreciate that.